Hello, everyone. I will be walking you through today how to develop your own custom activities with Hello Activity Project for UiPath using .NET 6 or above. So the first thing we're going to do is go out to our Git repo and clone the repository. So we'll go under code here and copy that. Links to this will be in the description, and then we'll plug that into our IDE, let it save to the default directory, hit clone, and let that clone. So once that finished cloning, it'll open the project. And once the project loads, okay, now that our project's loaded, we're going to come over to the Explorer. We're going to right click on the solution, and then I'm going to do Show in Explorer to bring this up in Windows Explorer, the path that we're working in. So once that comes up, I'm going to go up here to the bar, type cmd.exe in front of it to bring up a command console in this directory. And then once this comes up, we can actually close the project in our IDE for now. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then the first thing we'll want to do is get our namespaces in the projects changed over. So the easiest way to do that is to run this quick start bat and then put in what you would like your namespaces to be. So the UiPath convention is like the company name dot and then a description of what your activity does. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add an extension to the system file in UiPath. So we'll do that as our namespace, system.file. Hit enter and just give that a minute to run. And what this is doing is it's going through all the files in the project and changing everything that says UiPath.helloActivity to system.file so that we don't have to do any finding and replacing on our own in order to get this up and running. All right, now that that's done, it changed all of our namespaces older and deleted the Git association that it had with the official repo. So now it is truly a clean project for us to work on. So we'll go ahead and close this here. We will bring the project back up, which we'll see now. The folder's name system.file. So we'll open this in our IDE. Now that we're done with the quick start, we can delete that as well. Now that the project's loaded, we could go into our system.file and we can open up our activities and designer projects. And depending on the path of your UiPath install, you may get these dependency errors. So the first thing we'll have to do is update our references. So these are, if they would be broken, this is where they would be broken at. And then attach these. So for the system.file.activities, that project's going to need system activities and UiPath workflow for the designer project. Path workflow and all four of the system activities. And sometimes if you're using Rider as your IDE like I am, errors will persist, but they will go away eventually. There's something about IntelliJ that's not clicking in the background, but at this point you should be able to build your solution and it build without errors. So from here, what we're actually going to do to demonstrate this is convert the old activity that I have into this activity with the proper structure. So we are not going to need a scope, so we could get rid of the scope activity and test activities, or the test scope activity. So I'll edit, delete the scope and the scope activity so that we're just left with our test activity. We could do the same under designers, scope activity designer, remove, test scope designer, remove. And then anything we don't need will also need to be removed from this designer metadata.cs. So get rid of those as well. And that should resolve our errors. So now we can start changing the inner workings of our activity. The first thing we could change is the class name. So what we're going to want is a read lines from text file class. And I'm going to use the refactor option, which should be available in any modern IDE. So I'm going to refactor this, rename. That way it updates all instances of this class everywhere, so I don't have to do a bunch of finding and replacing. And then we're going to change the value of our properties in here. Read lines from text file and the description that goes with it. Reads an array of lines from the specified text file. Then we can right click and refactor the descriptions here as well. So refactor, rename, done and done. Next we could go and change our properties. Let's see what we had here. So we got a file path based over text input with file path. String list. I don't like that name that we had before, so I'm just going to do lines and make the output type a list of string. That way all the list operations will be available on the UiPath side. So we'll add a reference to system.collections.generic. That should be an out argument. So change input to output. Start updating down here as well. Refactor, rename. Help if I start on the right. One. Input file path. Test activity to read lines from text file. Refactor, rename. Refactor, rename. Go into the description for each of these and update their values. File path. Path of the file to read. Do the same for the other argument. Factor rename. Test activity to lines. Update the values for each. List of lines contains specified text file. Those are our properties. So now we're going to come down to the execute async, which is basically the main method for our core activity logic's going to be. So I can take what we had previously in the old file and just update that here, not in the logging node. I can stay as it is, and then in here, I'm gonna update. Don't need any of that demo data anymore. And then validations. See, we didn't do any validation before, but we probably should. So if string is null or empty on the file path, looks like there was a file path from the demo. You could just throw a file not found exception. That is fine. And then our execution logic is pretty simple. One-liner from .NET. Get our log info, reading text file to done. And the significance of the log file is, even though we have an ability to do unit testing, which I'll show in a little bit here, you'll still want to, there'll be times where you'll get errors from UiPath, and then you can set an optional log path, debug log path to a text file, and then it'll write this stuff out to that as a log, and then it will give you helpful information as to where your errors are likely occurring at runtime from within UiPath. So this is just the best practice we've implemented. Be fine there. The IDE saying we probably want to use the async here, which I agree with. And passes cancellation token, so that's good. Set any output values. So we're gonna set the lines out here. All right, no errors, so that's as it should be. We updated the class name, we updated properties, we updated activity logic, we updated all comments. So we can look at the configuration of our layout next. So we could go over to the designer.xaml. And this is going to control the way our activity looks in UiPath. So inside our stack panel here, this is that first read from file path. So we actually probably want to use a file selector. There should be a file path control. This is the one we're going to want. So we'll take this from down there and move it under our first label. Make sure it's pointing to the right descriptor. And then it's already named file path, so we don't have to update our reference to file path in either of these. But if the variable were different, you'd need to rename it here and here. And it is an in argument, so that stays the same. That should update on property changed. And then the next one would be the lines. And that's all we have for this one. So I'm going to get rid of all this other leftover stuff from the demonstration part of the code, all the way down to that stack panel. And this text box, we'll move it below the second label. Update the descriptor. This one will change text input to lines there and here. And then this is an out argument. So we're going to put this as out. And then use location expression. Since this is an out argument, we're going to change from false to true. If you don't do that, you'll get weird errors on the UiPath side that are hard to fix. Or it's that they're not obvious what the root cause is, but having that flag flipped the wrong way will cause you all kinds of trouble. And then down here, if we go to our unit tests project, there might be some errors in here because we deleted a bunch of stuff, but this is how we can test an activity without actually having to do it in UiPath. New text document, demo, open that up, we'll give it some content. It's a test of the broadcast system. This is only a test. Save that. So then under our path, we can put our path in here. Temp demo.txt. Put an @ in front of that to accept the path. And we're not setting any enums, so this can go away. Switch this to lines. We'll set some appropriate breakpoints so we can step through our logic. So we're set to run unit tests, so we'll debug that. All right, now that we hit our breakpoint, we'll just F10 through this. We'll go inside the invoker there. All right, I went inside our activity, so we're getting the file path. I'm going to validate that that's not empty, so we can see that it read it as a string 3 with our data, one for each line. And we made it out. And we got an object that's a list of string with a count of 3. So this is how it would return to UiPath. So next step would be actually building this for UiPath. And then, so from my IDE, we'll do advanced build options, and then pack selected project. And that will create a NuGet package we can import into UiPath. So I'm going to pull that up in Explorer, go inside the bin debug folder, and when that build completes, we should see a happy little NuGet package waiting for us. Copy that path. There's our package. So if I go over to UiPath now, I'm going to create a new process. And then we'll do this. I'm going to do it in C#, though it should work fine in VB for those who do that. And then select Windows and not Windows Legacy, because we're working in .NET Core, not the old framework. And if you do create a framework project and you try to read a core component, it will not show up in the UiPath package manager. So if you don't see anything, that usually indicates you got the wrong kind of project selected. And the same as vice versa. You can't load a core component into a .NET framework package in UiPath. Okay, once our UiPath Studio loads, we can go over to manage packets. And then under settings, we're going to add this as a new source. I'm going to do file test. Hit add, and then you can see over here, it gets added as like a repo. So I'm going to click that, install. Once our package is loaded, we should be able to go to our activities inside that namespace we are working in. So system, file, and then right here is our custom activity. So if I open the main workflow, we can take our custom activity, drag and drop it out here. Make sure everything looks like we expect. Temp, demo, create a variable, lines, and then it should populate both the file path and the variable over in our properties without throwing any errors. So that looks good. And we're going to go to box, do a message box for our output, and then we'll do lines. Count to string plus a space line 0. And we can run this, and we should get the same predictable output that we got in Visual Studio or Writer, depending on what you're doing. And there we go. We got our count of 3 lines present, with the value of the first line being this is a test. All right, there are 2 things I would do before I'd consider this production ready. The first would be to come out here and look at the resources.regex. Then inside here, you could look down through it for any values that are not mapped to a thing that are left over from the demonstration project. So like any of these test scopes, these that we deleted, these could all be removed. And that would be the first thing. The second thing I would do is if you come over here to your designer project and then edit the project.cs file that goes with it. You could see in here, you could change the package tags, the name, your company, the description of your project, the license type, and then you could even knock off, because when you do a package, it'll automatically, when you're debugging, put as a date time to put that last version number on there, so you could do it quick without having to come in here each time. I'd remove this line out and then just set it to the production version and do a prod build on it, and then you'd be all set. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Have a great day.